December 7, 1941. U-7, 48 a.m., Pearl Harbor territory of Hawaii. Waves slap against moored battleships. The morning air smells of coffee and diesel. Then the sky tears open. Japanese Zeros roar in low torpedoes, slicing water like silver knives. Explosions ripple across Battleship Row. The USS Arizona lifts upward, buckles, then collapses as her magazine detonates. Over 1,000 men die in 9 seconds. Steel melts. Oil ignites. Sailors claw for breath in burning water faces, twisted in final agony. Black smoke climbs 1,000 feet. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida circles overhead, counting hits. 8 battleships struck. Nearly 200 aircraft destroyed on the ground before they can fight. He transmits the prearranged signal. Tora, Tora, Tora. Perfect surprise, perfect execution, perfect victory. But inside the smoke and chaos lies a silent impossibility that will doom everything Japan has planned. The U.S. Carriers. Enterprise Lexington, Saratoga. Japan's true targets, the only ships that matter in modern naval warfare, are nowhere in sight. Gone. Vanished. Not a single one caught in the trap. An ambush that appears flawless is already fatally broken. The victory Japan believes it owns is the seed of its collapse. The knockout blow that was supposed to win the war has missed the only targets capable of striking back. What happens when the perfect strike misses the only targets that matter? Across the vast Pacific, Japan launches a lightning offensive that rewrites the map of the world. 6 months. That's all it takes to shatter empires that stood for centuries. The leaders in Tokyo believe a single crushing blow will break America, still recovering from depression, distracted by isolationism, unprepared for total war. Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto designs the strategy himself. Destroy the Pacific Fleet. Seize resource-rich territories, force negotiations before American industry awakens. It's a calculated gamble built on one fatal assumption: America lacks the will to fight a long war across an ocean. Territory after territory falls with terrifying speed. December 8th. Japanese forces invade Malaya and Thailand simultaneously. December 10th. Guam surrenders 450 Marines overwhelmed by 6,000 troops. December 23rd. Wake Island falls after its tiny garrison inflicts Japan's first tactical defeat, then dies fighting. December 25th. Hong Kong capitulates on Christmas Day. January 1942, Manila falls. MacArthur retreats to Bataan with 78,000 troops marching toward starvation. The numbers are staggering. The speed is unprecedented. The scope is unimaginable. Oil lanes hang in balance. Colonies crumble. Entire regions shift hands overnight. The Dutch East Indies petroleum Japan desperately needs. Singapore, the fortress Britain swears is impregnable. Burma, the gateway to India. China's last lifeline to the outside world. Japan's advance moves so fast that Western commanders can't process it. The empire conquers in weeks what European powers took centuries to build. Maps in London and Washington are redrawn daily, each update showing more red bleeding across the Pacific and Southeast Asia. Military analysts calculate that at this rate, Japan will control half the world's population within a year. The conquest seems unstoppable, divine, destined. But in dim, cluttered rooms in Washington and Pearl Harbor, a different kind of war is being fought, one Japan doesn't even know exists. American codebreakers quietly assemble fragments of intercepted messages, an invisible resistance, a silent counterattack. Station Hypeo operates from a cramped basement at Pearl Harbor. Station Negat works in Washington. Commander Joseph Rochefort leads Hypo, a brilliant cryptanalyst who speaks fluent Japanese and thinks like the enemy. Lieutenant Commanders Dyer Huckins Wright work alongside him. Together, they attack the Japanese naval code JN-25, one of the most complex cipher systems ever created. The work happens in windowless rooms that smell of stale coffee, cigarette smoke, and desperation. 18-hour shifts. No days off. No sunlight. Coffee goes cold in chipped mugs. Cigarette smoke hangs so thick it burns eyes. They track invisible patterns, frequency changes that signal fleet movements, call sign rotations that reveal command structures, message volumes that indicate operation planning. Paper strips cover walls like strange wallpaper. Code groups are written, crossed out, rewritten as understanding slowly emerges from chaos. The work is maddening, tedious, brilliant, and absolutely critical. Slowly, painstakingly, through thousands of hours of mental warfare, they begin to see into the mind of the enemy. They recognize administrative messages from operational orders. They identify which admiral commands which fleet. They track ships by radio signatures alone. They map Japan's entire naval organization without seeing a single vessel. Japan's naval communications flow in cipher, every message encrypted using complex mathematical substitution. The Japanese believe their codes are unbreakable. They send orders freely, confident in mathematical security. That confidence will kill them, because ciphers can be broken, patterns can be found, and broken codes mean knowing where the enemy will strike before he arrives, the ultimate battlefield advantage that transforms war from chaos into chess. While Japan celebrates victories across the Pacific, while newspapers in Tokyo print maps showing the empire's expansion, while citizens believe their military is invincible, American cryptologists are stealing Japan's secrets one message at a time. The real war isn't always fought where bombs fall. Sometimes it's won in silent rooms by exhausted men armed only with pencils, paper, and minds sharp enough to see patterns invisible to everyone else. Japan doesn't know it yet, but the intelligence war is already lost, and that loss will cost them everything. The question isn't whether Japan can conquer the Pacific, it's whether they'll see the invisible enemy until it's too late. The momentum feels unstoppable, inevitable, divine. Each dawn brings news of another catastrophe. Each night, the map bleeds more red. In the Philippines, Clark Field is obliterated on December 8th, 9 hours after Pearl Harbor. 9 hours of warning. 9 hours to prepare. Yet somehow inexplicably caught completely unprepared. 60 B-17 bombers and P-40 fighters burn on the ground, lined up in neat rows like targets on a practice range. General MacArthur's Air Force, America's first line of defense in the Pacific, destroyed before firing a shot. The failure will haunt MacArthur for the rest of his life, a shadow he can never escape. MacArthur retreats to the Bataan Peninsula as Japanese forces advance from multiple landing sites. 78,000 American and Filipino troops withdraw into the jungle-covered peninsula. It's supposed to be a temporary defensive position. It becomes a death trap. Supplies dwindle within days. The planned 3-month stockpile was never completed, administrative failure compounding tactical disaster. Rations are cut to half portions, then a quarter. Soldiers receive 1,000 calories a day while fighting in tropical heat, while digging defensive positions, while carrying wounded through jungle. Malaria spreads through the ranks like fire through dry grass. Dysentery kills as effectively as bullets, more slowly, more painfully. Men eat cavalry horses, then mules, then anything that might sustain life. Roots, leaves, lizards, insects. Bataan becomes a slow-motion execution, its defenders growing weaker by the day, while the world watches helplessly from a distance too far to matter. Across Southeast Asia, the dominoes fall faster than anyone imagined possible. Malaya collapses from the north like a house of cards in a windstorm. British forces, confident in their carefully prepared defensive positions, fall back toward Singapore in escalating panic. Each defensive line breaks. Each fallback position is outflanked. Each stand is overrun. General Tomoyuki Yamashita's 25th Army moves through supposedly impassable jungle on bicycles, thousands of soldiers on captured bikes appearing where British defense plans say no army can possibly go. The bicycle blitzkrieg becomes legend overnight. Japanese troops pedaling through jungle trails, outflanking fortified positions, moving faster than defenders can retreat, appearing behind lines thought secure. British commanders trained in European warfare cannot comprehend it. Their doctrine has no answer for an enemy who ignores terrain limitations and rewrites tactical possibilities. On February 15, 1942, Singapore falls. Lieutenant General Arthur Percival surrenders 130,000 Allied troops, British, Australian, Indian, to a Japanese force of $36,000. The fortress that was never supposed to fall, that British propaganda called the Gibraltar of the East, that symbolized European dominance in Asia for a century, is gone in 70 days. Churchill receives the news in London. He will later write, "It was the worst disaster and largest capitulation in British history." The photograph of surrender becomes iconic, Percival carrying the white flag to Yamashita, the symbol of imperial collapse captured in a single image. Newspapers across Asia printed on front pages. The message is clear: the white man's empire is finished. Hong Kong breaks after 18 days of brutal, hopeless fighting. The garrison, outnumbered 5-1 and cut off from any possibility of reinforcement, holds Christmas dinner in bunkers under constant bombardment. Canned rations eaten by candlelight while shells explode overhead. Prayers said quietly while men check ammunition counts. On December 25th, Christmas Day, they raise the white flag. Japanese troops enter the city on Boxing Day. The holiday celebrated across the Christian world becomes the day Hong Kong dies. Burma's capital, Rangoon, is seized in March 1942 after a campaign that shatters British colonial forces trained for peacekeeping, not war. The Burma Road, China's last supply line to the outside world, the route that keeps Chiang Kai-shek's army supplied and fighting, is severed. China is isolated, cut off, dependent now on dangerous flights over the Himalayas, flying the hump, where weather kills as many pilots as enemy action. Japan controls the routes, the ports, the oil wells, the rubber plantations. All the resources it went to war to secure are now in Japanese hands. To the south, Darwin, Australia, is bombed on February 19, 1942. The same carrier task force from Pearl Harbor conducts the raid with brutal efficiency. Ships are sunk in the harbor. Oil storage tanks explode in fireballs visible for miles. The town is evacuated in panic as civilians flee south. For the first time in its history, Australia faces genuine invasion threat. Not theoretical, not distant, real and immediate. Civilians dig bomb shelters in suburban backyards. Troops prepare defensive positions along the northern coast. Children are evacuated inland to relatives in Melbourne and Sydney. The psychological shock is profound. The war that seemed far away has reached Australian soil, has killed Australian civilians, has shattered the illusion of safety. Japan now controls an empire larger than any in history seized in less than 6 months. But beneath Japan's triumph, doubts whisper. The American carriers that escaped destruction become ghosts in the Pacific, unpredictable, infuriating, dangerous. Enterprise raids the Marshalls on February 1st. Yorktown and Lexington strike Lae and Salamaua in New Guinea on March 10th. These are pinpricks, but they unnerve Japanese planners. Where are the carriers? When will they strike? Can they be drawn into decisive battle and in secret? At Eglin Field, Florida, Lieutenant Colonel James Doolittle prepares a retaliation meant to wound pride, not capacity. 16 B-25. Mitchell bombers. Medium bombers never designed for carrier operations are modified. Extra fuel tanks installed, lower gun turrets removed to save weight, crews trained to take off in impossibly short distances. The plan seems suicidal. Launch from a carrier 400 miles off Japan, bomb Tokyo, fly to airfields in China. No way to land back on the carrier. Fuel will be marginal. The odds of survival are poor. Doolittle asks for volunteers. Every man in his group steps forward. The question isn't whether Japan can be hit, it's whether hitting Japan will force a fatal mistake. The Pacific becomes a chessboard played across 10 million square miles of empty ocean, each piece moving in secrecy, each player trying to anticipate the other's strategy, each mistake potentially fatal. Yamamoto spreads his fleet's wide carriers functioning as queens dominating the board. He commands 6 fleet carriers, Akagi and Kaga, converted from battleship hulls, large and powerful. Soryu and Hiryu, purpose-built carrier designs fast and lethal. Shokaku and Zuikaku, the newest and most advanced in the world. Each carries 60 to 70 aircraft Zero fighters that outperform anything America flies. Val dive bombers proven at Pearl Harbor. Kate torpedo bombers that can kill battleships. Combined air groups total over 400 aircraft, flown by the most experienced naval aviators in the world. Veterans of China Pearl Harbor, the Indian Ocean. Men with thousands of flight hours. Pilots who can land on a pitching carrier deck in darkness. Bombardiers who can put bombs into moving ships from 10,000 feet. This is the mobile force, the Kido Butai, the instrument that has won every battle for 6 months. The most powerful carrier-striking force ever assembled in naval history, a concentration of air power that can devastate any target within a 200-mile radius. Against this, Nimitz has 3 carriers, maybe 4 if Saratoga finishes repairs, fewer aircraft, less experienced pilots, inferior fighters. But Nimitz has something Yamamoto doesn't know exists. He has Commander Joseph Rochefort. Rochefort works in his bathrobe in the basement operations center at Pearl Harbor, chain-smoking Lucky Strikes, sleeping on a cot between decryption sessions, living on coffee cigarettes and the adrenaline of intellectual combat. His team intercepts thousands of messages daily, processing them through pattern analysis, frequency tracking, linguistic decryption. They're not just reading messages, they're reading minds. They identify key indicators invisible to others. Radio call signs changing on predictable schedules, proof that fleet organizations are shifting. Frequency shifts suggesting major movements into different operational zones. Traffic volume spikes indicating operation planning at high command levels. Message links that distinguish routine reports from operational orders. A pattern emerges from the noise. Something big is building. Bigger than the raids. Bigger than anything yet. Designated Operation MO in Japanese communications. Station Hypo determines through careful analysis that MO means Port Moresby, New Guinea. If Japan seizes Port Moresby, Northern Australia is directly threatened. The air bridge is cut. The entire Southwest Pacific becomes a Japanese lake. Australia falls next. Nimitz makes his decision. Deploy Lexington and Yorktown to intercept. Position them south of the Solomon Islands, where intelligence predicts Japanese forces will pass. May 7, 8, 1942, the Battle of the Coral Sea. History's first naval battle where opposing ships never sight each other. All combat conducted by carrier aircraft attacking targets over the horizon. It's a new kind of warfare. Big guns are obsolete. Battleships are targets, not weapons. Aviation is everything. Lexington is sunk after taking torpedo and bomb hits that ignite aviation gasoline fires her damage control teams cannot contain. The fires burn for hours. Men abandon ship as explosions rack her hull. She goes down slowly, settling by the stern, finally slipping beneath the waves at 8:00 p.m. Yorktown is damaged by a bomb that penetrates her flight deck but remains operational through brilliant damage control and crew determination. The Japanese light carrier Shoho is destroyed in minutes under massed American air attack. Scratch 1 flat top, radio's Lieutenant Commander Robert Dixon as Shoho sinks. The fleet carrier Shokaku is heavily damaged by multiple bomb hits and limps back to Japan for months of repairs. Zuikaku survives intact but loses most of her experienced aircrew pilots and bombardiers who cannot be replaced in time for the next operation. Tactically nearly a draw. 1 American fleet carrier for 1 Japanese light carrier. But strategically everything changes. Japan's southward advance stops permanently. Port Moresby remains in Allied hands. Australia is secure. The invasion that would have isolated Australia never happens. For the first time since December 7th, Japan has been halted. The aura of invincibility cracks. Japanese planners realized that American carriers properly deployed with good intelligence can fight the mobile force to a standstill. The psychological impact ripples through both navies. Americans gain confidence. Japanese gain doubt. But the real blow to Japanese pride comes from an entirely different direction. April 18, 1942, 650 miles off the coast of Japan. Doolittle's B-25s launch early from the carrier Hornet. The task force was spotted by Japanese picket boats at dawn, forcing the launch 200 miles farther out than planned. Stripped down and fueled to the edge of possibility, carrying just enough gas to maybe reach China, the bombers roar off the carrier deck one by one. Lieutenant Colonel Doolittle takes off first, leading by example, always leading. His wheels leave the deck with less than 50 feet to spare. The bomber drops toward the Waves engines, straining at maximum power before clawing for altitude. 15 more bombers follow in sequence, each crew watching the one ahead, learning, adjusting, surviving the takeoff that could kill them before the mission begins. They reach Japan at noon, flying at treetop level to avoid radar detection. Bombs fall on Tokyo, Yokohama, Nagoya, Osaka, Kobe. 5 cities struck simultaneously. Industrial targets, docks, factories, rail yards. Physical damage is minimal. Perhaps 50 buildings destroyed, a few hundred casualties, some fires quickly controlled, but the psychological impact is seismic. An earthquake in the Japanese psyche. Japan's home islands, untouched for over 1,000 years, protected by divine wind and ocean distance, have been violated. American bombs have fallen on the emperor's capital. The military's solemn promise of absolute security is shattered. Citizens who believe themselves safe suddenly realize the war has come home. Air raid sirens wail in cities that have never heard them. Children are evacuated to the countryside. Blackout drills become mandatory. The illusion of invulnerability dies in smoke and rubble. Yamamoto feels the blow personally. He promised the emperor that Japan's homeland would never be attacked. Now he must respond. He proposes Operation MI, seize Midway Atoll, draw out the American carriers, destroy them in decisive battle. The plan is complex diversionary attack on the Aleutians' main force against Midway submarines in picket lines to detect the American response. But Japan responds by stretching its defensive perimeter thin, and empire expanding faster than it can hold. Forces are divided. Carriers are committed to multiple operations. The margin for error shrinks. At Station Hypo, Rochefort's team detects increased traffic about AF. They believe AF is Midway, but they need confirmation. Rochefort devises a brilliant ruse, have Midway send an uncoded message reporting freshwater system failure. Days later, Station Hypo intercepts a Japanese message, AF is short of water. Confirmation. Nimitz knows where Yamamoto will strike. He positions Enterprise Hornet and the damaged Yorktown patched up in 72 hours at Pearl Harbor, northeast of Midway, ready to ambush the ambushers. In war, the side that sees first often wins. The side that sees clearly and acts decisively wins everything. Operation Magic, the American code-breaking program, cracks Japan's codes completely. Not just fragments, not just educated guesses. Full operational intelligence. Rochefort's team reads Japanese orders almost as quickly as Japanese admirals receive them. They know ship positions, aircraft complements, fuel states, admiral names, operational intentions, backup plans. It's the intelligence coup of the Pacific War, perhaps of any war. But intelligence alone doesn't win battles. Men still have to act on it under fire. Decisions still have to be made when exhaustion clouds judgment and fear tightens throats, and pressure reveals character, both strength and fatal weakness. June 4, 1942, 4:30 a.m., Vice Admiral Chuichi Nagumo aboard the flagship carrier Akagi faces a devastating psychological fracture that will decide the battle before the first bomb falls. His first strike wave, 108 aircraft, hits Midway at dawn. The island's defenses are stronger than intelligence suggested. Anti-aircraft fire is heavy. Marine fighters rise to intercept. Nagumo's air crews return reporting significant damage inflicted, but another strike is necessary to neutralize the base completely. Nagumo has held back a reserve strike force of 93 aircraft armed with torpedoes for anti-ship attack standard doctrine in case American carriers appear. Now believing no American carriers are near, he orders them rearmed with bombs for a second strike on Midway. On the hangar decks of Akagi Kagasoryu ordnance crews begin the laborious process. Torpedoes are removed from bomb bays. Bombs are hauled up from magazines. It will take an hour. Then at 07:28 a.m., a Japanese scout plane, delayed 30 minutes in launching due to catapult problems, radios a message that shatters Nagumo's certainty. 10 ships sighted. Nagumo's mind fractures. American ships, where what type? At 07:45 a.m., the scout clarifies, enemy force includes what appears to be a carrier. Nagumo faces an impossible decision. Continue striking Midway with bombs or rearm again with torpedoes for naval combat. He hesitates. Minutes pass like hours. Communications with the scout plane are confused. Is it one carrier or more? What course? What speed? At 07:55 a.m., his returning Midway strike force arrives overhead low on fuel, some damaged, needing to land immediately. Nagumo makes his decision: recover the Midway strike force first, then rearm with torpedoes, then launch. He reverses his previous order for the second time that morning. On the hangar decks of Akagi Kagasoryu Hiryu ordnance crews work frantically, desperately. Bombs that were just loaded are removed again. Torpedoes are hauled back into position. Fueling hoses snake across decks. Aircraft crowd together wingtip to wingtip. The carriers turn into the wind to recover aircraft. Returning bombers and fighters land one after another as deck crews scramble. Fuel trucks pump avgas. Ordnance carts move bombs and torpedoes. The ships become floating magazines packed with high explosives, fuel lines, open ordnance stacked in passageways and on deck edges. Everything that can burn or explode is exposed and ready. Nagumo's hesitation, that span of minutes between confidence and doubt, becomes fatal. The moment stretches. Disbelief mingles with arrogance. The Americans shouldn't be here. Intelligence said they wouldn't be here. The plan was perfect. How can the enemy know where we are? That instant of doubt, that psychological crack in Japan's certainty about its own invincibility and superior intelligence, becomes the hinge upon which history turns. American dive bombers arrive at the exact wrong moment for Japan, the exact right moment for history. When arrogance meets reality at 14,000 feet, the collision is absolute and final. June 4, 1942, 10:22 a.m., northwest of Midway Atoll. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey, leading Enterprise's Bombing Squadron 6, has been searching for 2 hours. Fuel runs critically low. His 33 Dauntless dive bombers are nearing the point of no return. Some pilots signal that they must turn back or ditch in the ocean. McCluskey makes one last decision: continue southwest for 5 more minutes. At 10:20 a.m., through broken clouds at 14,000 feet, he spots a lone Japanese destroyer racing northeast at high-speed Arashi, returning to the main fleet after depth charging an American submarine. McCluskey follows the destroyer's wake like a highway. Then he sees them. 4 Japanese fleet carriers in a neat box formation turning into the wind to launch aircraft. Decks crowded with planes, fuel hoses still connected, ordnance crews working frantically. McCluskey doesn't hesitate. He pushes over into his attack dive. 33 Dauntless dive bombers drop from cloud cover, falling nearly vertical. Silent, invisible until the last seconds. No radar warning, no time to scatter. They fall like predators on prey, frozen in the open. At exactly 10:22 a.m., the first 1,000-pound bomb hits Akagi near the midship elevator. The explosion penetrates the flight deck. Secondary detonations rip through the hangar below. Aviation fuel ignites. Bombs stacked for loading cook-off. Torpedoes detonate in chain reactions. Within 3 minutes, Akagi is a floating torch flames shooting 200 feet into the air. Simultaneously, Yorktown's dive bombers, arriving by pure chance at the same instant, hit Kaga. Three 1,000-pound bombs penetrate the flight deck within seconds. Gasoline fires erupt across the hangar. Fueled aircraft explode. The hangar becomes a blast furnace. Men caught below have no chance. Survivors abandon ship into oil-dark water, swimming away from the heat. Enterprise's 2nd Squadron hits Soryu. 3 bombs land in rapid succession. Fuel lines burst throughout the ship. Flames race through passageways faster than men can run. The carrier lists immediately. Within 20 minutes, the order to abandon ship is given. Soryu capsizes 2 hours later, taking 700 men with her. Within 6 minutes, from 10:22 to 10:28 a.m., 3 Japanese fleet carriers are burning, doomed wrecks. The mobile force that struck Pearl Harbor, that dominated the Pacific for 6 months, that seemed invincible, shattered in the time it takes to boil water. Hiryu, operating separately from the main formation, remains untouched. Vice Admiral Taman Yamaguchi orders immediate retaliation. His aircraft find Yorktown at 12:20 p.m. Nakajima B-5N torpedo bombers press their attacks through heavy anti-aircraft fire. 2 torpedoes strike Yorktown's port side. The carrier lists 14 degrees, stops dead in the water, then slowly stabilizes through heroic damage control. She absorbs punishment that would sink most ships, testament to American engineering and crew training, but American scout planes locate Hiryu. At 0:05 EO0 p.m., Enterprise's dive bombers hit her with 4 bombs. Fires consume the carrier from stem to stern. By evening, Hiryu is dead in the water flames, eating through her vitals. Admiral Yamaguchi chooses to go down with his ship. He and Captain Kaku remain on the bridge as Hiryu sinks the next morning. From 350 miles away aboard the massive battleship Yamato, Admiral Yamamoto receives the radio reports in silence. Each message brings worse news. All 4 carriers lost, over 300 aircraft destroyed, hundreds of irreplaceable aircrew veterans of Pearl Harbor, of the Indian Ocean, of countless victories gone. The mobile force, the instrument of Japan's Pacific dominance, the symbol of its naval might, is destroyed in a single day. At 02:55 a.m. on June 5th, Yamamoto makes the hardest decision of his career. He orders the fleet to withdraw. Operation MI is canceled. The invasion force turns back. The submarines are recalled. The diversionary force in the Aleutians is orphaned, achieving meaningless tactical success while strategic disaster unfolds at Midway. The offensive that was supposed to win the war is over. Japan will never advance again. In 6 minutes, the entire course of the Pacific War reversed, not through superior numbers, but through one moment of enemy hesitation and one broken code. 4 Japanese fleet carriers lost: Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu. Over 2,200 sailors and aircrew dead. 248 aircraft destroyed. Japan's margin of naval superiority erased. Yorktown sinks on June 7th after further torpedo attacks, but the balance has shifted permanently. America loses 1 carrier. Japan loses 4 and can never replace them. The advance halts. Planned invasions are canceled. New Caledonia, Fiji, Samoa operations scrapped. Japan's offensive perimeter freezes. From this moment forward, every Japanese action is reactive, defensive, desperate. Doolittle's raiders scattered across China after their strike on Tokyo reached safety with Chinese help. Doolittle himself believes the raid was a failure. He lost all 16 aircraft. He expects court-martial. Instead, he receives the Medal of Honor. The raid's strategic effect far exceeded its tactical damage. It forced Japan into overreach, into the fatal decision to seize Midway. MacArthur, evacuated from the Philippines in March, establishes headquarters in Australia. He makes his promise, "I shall return." In August 1942, American forces land on Guadalcanal. The counteroffensive begins. America's industrial power surges awake. Shipyards in Norfolk, San Francisco, Philadelphia work triple shifts. The Essex-class carrier program accelerates. Liberty ships roll off production lines at a rate of 3 per day. In 6 months, America will replace all losses. In a year, it will achieve naval superiority. In 2 years, it will possess overwhelming force. Japan's window for victory closes. The war they plan to win in 6 months will grind on for 3 more years each day, eroding what remains. The turning point wasn't loud. It was 6 minutes of silence before bombs fell. Midway ends Japan's dreams of a fast war and a negotiated peace. The combined fleet never regains the initiative. Every subsequent battle, Guadalcanal, the Philippine Sea Lady Gulf, is fought from a position of declining strength. Japan turns defensive, fortifying islands, trading space for time. The perimeter shrinks. Island by island, base by base, the empire contracts. By 1944, American submarines strangled Japan's merchant marine. By 1945, B-29 bombers burned Japanese cities. The atomic bombs are merely punctuation on a defeat already written. Code breaking becomes the Allies' decisive weapon, shaping every major victory that follows. Operation Magic intercepts continue throughout the war. In April 1943, intelligence allows American P-38s to intercept and kill Admiral Yamamoto over Bougainville. The architect of Pearl Harbor dies in the jungle, his plan in ruins. Carrier warfare replaces battleships as the future of naval power. The lessons of Midway echo through Korea, Vietnam, the Falklands, the Persian Gulf. Carriers become instruments of power projection, mobile airfields controlling vast areas of ocean. Intelligence proves more lethal than firepower. Knowing where the enemy will strike, understanding his intentions, seeing his plans before he executes them, this becomes the ultimate advantage. Modern warfare inherits this lesson. Satellite signals intelligence, cyber operations, all descendants of what Rochefort's team achieved in a basement at Pearl Harbor. The cryptologists received little recognition during the war. Security demands silence. Rochefort is quietly transferred. The code breaking remains classified for decades. Not until the 1970s does the public learn how Midway was truly won. The greatest battles are fought in silence, decided before the first shot is fired. In the Pacific's quiet aftermath, one truth lingers. Empires fall not to steel alone, but to a moment of pride unchallenged and a hesitation unplanned. Japan's plan was perfect on paper, but war is not fought on paper. It's fought by men who doubt, who hesitate, who make decisions under pressure while fuel burns and bombs wait. Nagumo's hesitation, that fracture between confidence and reality, killed more than ships. It killed certainty. It killed the illusion of invincibility. The forgotten cryptologists and ordinary pilots who turned the tide remind us that history pivots on the smallest choices. A decision to follow a lone destroyer, a gamble on broken codes, a moment of clarity in chaos. They didn't seek glory. Most remained anonymous. But their work echoes across decades, a reminder that the most decisive victories are measured not in miles conquered, but in moments of silence before the storm. Around Midway, the waves still roll. The wrecks of Akagi and Kaga rest in darkness, silent monuments to the price of arrogance. And in that silence, a truth remains: the greatest victories were measured not in miles, but in moments of recognition when enemies saw too late what they should have known all along. What they saw in that instant changed everything. If you want to understand how invisible forces shape history's turning points, explore the archive, where every story reveals the hidden cost of certainty.